Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Inner West Council. I will now declare the meeting open at 6:31 p.m. on the 9th of August 2022. I will be chairing the meeting tonight as the acting mayor, but as outlined in the Code of Meeting Practice, I will be referred to as chair or chairperson during the meeting. I remind councillors of the oath or affirmation we all made at the beginning of this council term and to our meeting obligations and the requirements to run our meetings in accordance with the principles outlined in the Code. I would ask that you please be mindful of these principles as we progress through the agenda tonight. I acknowledge the Gadigal Wangal people of the Eora Nation on whose country we are meeting tonight and their elders past, present and emerging. Councillors, are there any apologies, requests for leave of absences or online attendance for tonight's meeting? Councillor Lockie?
Chair, I believe Councillor Stamalos has requested to attend the meeting online.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
I'd like to register the apologies of the Mayor, Councillor Darcy Byrne.
Thank you. Councillors, we have an apology from Mayor Byrne and a request from Councillor Stamalos to attend the council meeting via audio-visual link due to personal reasons, which as a chair I support. Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept Councillor Byrne's apology and Councillor Stamalos' request to attend tonight's meeting via audio-visual link due to personal reasons?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. In the spirit of open, accessible and transparent government, the council meeting of Inner West Council will be streamed live on Council's website. The camera will be focused on the front of the chamber and will not be focused on the speakers or the public. By speaking at a council meeting, members of the public agree to be recorded and must ensure their speech to the council is respectful and use appropriate language. A person who uses defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may be exposed to liability for which the council takes no responsibility. As part of the meeting that is held in closed session, it will not be streamed but will be recorded for the purposes of verifying the accuracy of the minutes. Do any councillors present have any declarations of interest in any matters listed in the business papers tonight? Councillor Howard.
Thank you. I work in the non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item 7 local traffic committee for June and July 2022. I work in the office of the state member for Summerhill, who has a representative on the local traffic committee. I will remain in the meeting and vote during the discussion as the vote of the state member is exercised through a representative.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
I have a significant non-pecuniary interest in item 34 with regard to Tempe Bunnings. I am a member of the Sydney Eastern Planning Panel, which is the approval body for this project, and I will leave the meeting during the discussion and voting.
Thank you. Councillor Lockie.
Thank you, Chair. I'll declare a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item 8, General Manager's delegation, as I work for the City of Sydney, and that's used as one of the points of references for the delegations we'll be deciding tonight.
Will you be excluding yourself from the decision?
No, I won't. It won't affect my capacity to vote.
Thank you. Can I have a mover for the declaration of the 3 councillors who have declared a conflict of interest? Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. All in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I will now ask everyone to join me in a moment of quiet contemplation. Thank you, councillors. One item before the public forum. Councillors, we will confirm the minutes of the previous council meeting in June. Is there a mover and seconder for adoption of the minutes? Councillor Howard, are there any clarifications or corrections? Thank you, Councillor De Cruz.
And I have a clarification regarding the amendment to item 2 regarding the councillor expenses, and there was some confusion over the amendment I moved, and it appeared on the papers exactly the same as Councillor Lockie's amendment, but the officers have assisted in pointing out that it was slightly different, and that is the amendment.
That's the correction?
Yep.
Thank you. So you're moving an amendment. Councillor Howard, do you accept this amendment? Thank you. The amendment now becomes the motion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Let's move to the public forum section for this evening. Councillors, we have registered speakers for items 1, 18 and 21. Under Council's Code of Meeting Practice, registered speakers are entitled to 3 minutes to speak. Council is not in the process of extending time for public speakers or councillors, as we want to ensure that we are able to provide all speakers with the ability to be heard and to also get through tonight's meeting agenda. At 2.5 minutes, you will hear a warning bell ring. This is to let you know that you should start to wrap up. Another bell will ring when you have run out of time. The first registered speaker for item 1 is Jeff Mills. Is Mr. Mills in the forum? Would you like to attend the lectern? Thank you.
I'm here tonight basically on behalf of my son, which Matt has kindly written some condolence notes for. I was under the belief that Matt would be speaking first, but that's okay. I have read Matt's speech, so I do thank him for his very kind words. If you don't know Jared, it's a very accurate and personal description of him. As his parents, my wife and I are very proud of Jared and that he backed up his values with his actions. He showed many people the impact that one voice can have. His dedication and enthusiasm was recognised in a touching letter we received from the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. We basically wanted to say thank you to his colleagues and his comrades for respecting his views, appreciating his contributions, and for being his friends. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could now please call on the speaker, Roxana, registered for item 18, online. Hi.
As of last month, I met with national and state government and was knowing that I want to restore the Brisbane public schools to go to open tender, even where the school is happy with its not-for-profit provider. This is a policy decision influenced by the large commercial childcare operators. A different state government could easily decide that these services do not need to go to tender or to alter the process. Once local councils give up their bush services, it's even harder to get back in. The current bush tender process has been an increase in commercial providers delivering bush services. The care of children, our public schools and public land is being privatised. Council and other not-for-profit providers do not even put themselves forward as an option when privatisation is needed. As a parent, I would prefer my child to be cared for by service whose primary goal is to provide care for children, not a service whose primary objective is to make a profit. A lot of
child protection policy, including highly qualified staff who receive reasonable pay and pension. It's true that there are many providers competing to provide which services. This is because providing which services can be profitable. It should therefore be possible for council to provide higher quality services and still break even. I urge council not to give up on providing these services, but rather to look to expand children's services so that children in our community can benefit from high quality care.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker on item 21, Neil Tonkin.
Good evening. Item 21 is to do with enhancing active transport in our municipality. The Inner West Bicycle Coalition supports this motion. Active transport, by definition, implies some form of physical activity to enable people to get where they want to go. It means we can walk, cycle, use mobility scooters and catch buses, trains and ferries to get to our destinations, as well as keeping healthy. The Inner West is well suited to active transport. Distances are relatively small. Often the settlement pattern of the last 2 centuries was based on walking or cycling on quiet roads and within reach of a good rail, tram, ferry and bus network. Then came the car, promising speed, ease, convenience and individual freedom of movement. It doesn't take too much to see the effect that overdevelopment of car provision has had on our municipality. Air pollution and climate change, danger from traffic, increasing societal obesity and suburban isolation by busy roads. The residents of our former villages are constantly seeking scarce parking spaces. Children are told to be very careful of the traffic caused by speed and volume of motor vehicles. Motor vehicle congestion has serious consequences for business productivity, and our neighbourhoods have become islands confined by busy roads. Our coalition believes that many of these car-based problems can be lessened if a safe bicycle network is built across our municipality. It would be built to encourage the 70% of people who say they would cycle if the conditions were made safer. It can be comprised of a mix of separated bike lanes, traffic-calm streets and dedicated paths like the Greenway. This could have the effect of converting many of our short-term local car trips to bicycle. We are delighted that Council is developing the cycling strategy and action plan where these features will be proposed. That's the future. Let us now look at the present. Progress on developing a safe cycling network by the Inner West Council over the last 6 years could only be described as glacial. There are many valid internal reasons for a lack of progress on initiating cycling projects. However, recently the Transport Minister has announced, the Active Transport Minister, Rob Stokes, has announced to have put a new emphasis on active transport in the Sydney-Parramatta corridor, and Inner West could benefit from this stimulus if our council is ready. For this reason, our coalition wholeheartedly supports this motion to audit shovel-ready projects and existing cycling infrastructure. This will ensure that our council benefits from consistently winning grant applications. We particularly welcome the undertaking to restore regular meetings between our coalition and the engineers. Our members regularly ride the roads, see it warts and all, and we're well placed to advise council where improvements to safety and amenity need to be attended to in a timely manner. We hope our contribution will assist in converting many of the short-term car trips to cycling trips.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillors, that concludes the public forum, and we now move on to items on the business paper.
Madam Chair, apologies for the interruption. May I just make a clarification with regard to my declared conflict of interest?
Yes.
I should have said that it applies to item 7 as well as item 34. That was my error, but I hope you will indulge me in allowing a clarification. And if that's a problem, I seek advice from the Manager of Governance as to how we should correct the record.
Through the chair. Yep.
Thank you. You need to resolve to rescind the previously adopted motion and then just go through the process again, which is simple.
Okay.
Okay, well, I move that we rescind the procedural motion for this.
I'm going to move for them to recommit that item to the vote.
Okay, so councillors, I now move that we recommit item,
Conflicts of interest declaration,
the conflict of interest declaration for the vote, including the clarification from councillor Scott.
Yep, that my conflict applies to item 7 as well as item 34. And I will absent myself for the discussion and voting on both items.
Mover.
I'll just check that the minutes are, yes. Can I please have a mover for, yes, councillor Stevens, thank you, a seconder. Thank you, councillor Smith. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Under the newly adopted Code of Meeting Practice, councillors have 2 minutes to speak to each motion. We have a clock that's being run here that will time you down, and there's a sound at the end at the 2 minute mark. Is that right? At the 2 minute mark. So councillors, before we commence our condolence motions, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of former Mayor of Leichhardt, Chris Cruden, and foreshadow that there will be a condolence motion coming to the next council meeting. Item 1.
Madam Chair, if I could just... Oh, sorry, are we going to condolence motions now?
Condolence motions. Item 1.
Thank you, Chair. I speak to commemorate a fellow comrade, Jared Mills, who passed away recently at 20 years of age. I met Jared Mills 4 years ago when he came to a Marrickville Central Branch meeting of the ALP. He was a friendly, slightly awkward 16-year-old who wandered into Herb Gritty Hall, took a look at us all, no doubt feeling a little like a fish out of water, and then confidently took his place at the table. What first stood out about Jared was his age. Our monthly meetings do tend towards an older demographic. But what really made the biggest impression was the sincerity, intellect, and persistence with which he put forward his views and his perspectives. Jared cared deeply about the environment, about social justice, and about workers' rights. At one meeting, he spoke passionately about the lack of rights for workers in the gig economy. His motion followed the tragic death of a food delivery driver on Sydenham Road, just down the road from his home, and he argued in favour of providing all low-paid bicycle and motorcycle couriers with vital safety and personal protective equipment. At another meeting, he spoke passionately about ending no-grounds evictions for tenants, removing the insidious provisions that mean a tenant in New South Wales can be evicted at any time for any reason. When I sought my party's endorsement as a candidate for council, although I'd known Jared for a number of years, he asked that we meet up, and he put me through the ringer, wanting to test my resolve on climate, equality, and support for workers. That's exactly how it should be. He valued his vote, and he wanted it to matter. After joining the Labor Party at 16, he campaigned at every federal, state, and local government election thereafter, standing at pre-poll, door-knocking, and making calls. Proudly in May this year, he cast his first vote in a federal election for the man who would become Prime Minister of Australia. His vote mattered. Jared was smart but always humble. He was passionate but always gentle. He was generous and he encouraged greater kindness in the people around him. Chair, may I ask an extension for 1 minute, please?
Yes, can I have a mover? Thank you. Councillor Stevens, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Scott. All those in favour? Thank you.
Thank you. During the long COVID-19 lockdown, Jared volunteered much of his time visiting vulnerable people in the community who were lonely. He would sit with them and play chess. His community, our community, was important to him. We feel his loss greatly. I acknowledge his parents, Teresa and Jeff, and all Jared's family and their deep and profound grief. On behalf of councillors, I offer our condolences. I just can't imagine the extent of your loss, but want you to know how much Jared gave to the world in the short time he was here, just how much his life mattered. Vale Jared Mills.
Thank you, Councillor Howard, and I too would like to acknowledge and pass on behalf of the Inner West Council, our sincere condolences to those here today. Thank you. May I please ask for a seconder for the condolence motion? Thank you, Councillor Sadoulias. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 2, condolence motion for Francesco Fiorenza. Councillor Drury.
Thank you, Chair. Frank was one of those grand old Italians of Haberfield. He was a wonderful character. He cared pretty deeply about where he lived. He cared pretty passionately about social justice. He had some pretty firm leftist views that endeared him to me. He was tolerant of others' foibles, including the perceived foibles that occasionally he believed the council may commit. He would call me and gently suggest that things should be done differently in a polite and kindly manner. He was part of that generation of Haberfield that shopped locally, went off to St Joan of Arc, had their family around for great big celebrations on particularly the religious holidays. He never had kids. He had great nephews and nieces and great nieces and great nephews, and at the funeral they're all there noting that, noting his passing. And I suppose what struck me is that he was part of that generation that's moving, that they're going from Marrickville and Leichhardt, the old Greeks and the Italians, the post-war migrants, that contributed so much. And I thought we should note it here tonight and pass on our condolences, some of whom are members of the Inner West community.
Thank you, Councillor Drury, and I'll second that motion. I'll put to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to item 3, condolence motion for James Kevin Little.
Chair,
Councillor Drury.
Kevin Little served for 21 years as a councillor. Think about it, councillors. 21 years. I shan't serve that long, and I've served too long already. He was part of a generation in the 70s and 80s out of the Labor Party that's really wanted to make a difference in Marrickville. Part of a long line of people, proud working people from that suburb, who believed in their community, themselves and the family and the Catholic Church. I don't know what his football affiliation was, but that was often another part of that tradition. He grew up and lived in the Inner West. He went to the Inner West schools, and he was greatly and wanted to contribute greatly to community. He trained as an electrical engineer. He had builders and electrical licenses, and he set about making a life for himself and his family. Tonight we have Joanne and Sandra and Susan here. Thank you for coming along to have your father recognised. And we also, I suppose we should note that one of our wonderful childcare centres is named after your sister, Deborah, and that's a very fine centre that continues to offer very high quality childcare in our community, and she's remembered every day in there. I understand you also lost your mother recently, so it's been a tough year, but thank you for lending them, because I know they would have always been away and doing things and probably not doing as much parenting as they could have, particularly if he was serving for 21 years. We probably won't see the likes of Kevin again. I don't know if people do serve for 21 years in these these roles any longer. But thank you for that contribution, and we acknowledge the family here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Drury. I will second this motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously, and also pass on our condolences on behalf of the Inner West Council to the family in the chamber tonight. Thank you. There are nil mayoral minutes this evening.
Madam Chair, if there are nil mayoral minutes, I have some items to move in globo, please.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Items 5, I will add 6 to the amendment that was provided earlier, 11 and 15. Item 5, Employment Zones Reform. Item 6, Annandale VPA. Item 11 is the ARIC meeting minutes, and item 15 is the briefing note on pedestrian safety.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Councillors, items 5, 6, 11 and 15 will be moved in globo. Councillors, just a reminder, if you have a conflict of interest in any of these items being moved in globo, please ensure you manage your conflicts appropriately. I don't think there are any. No. So I will now put to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried.
Chair,
Yes. Councillor Lockie.
I would like to move a further procedural motion to propose an urgency motion regarding food security, which I circulated to all councillors over the weekend.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lockie. Would you like to explain your reasons why this is an urgency motion?
I would. I believe this is urgent because we are at the start of another rise in food insecurity in our area that's been triggered by the recent increases in cost of living expenses. And rather than wait a further month until our next meeting to act on the issue, we should get some actions underway now to get some urgent investigations and advocacy ahead of our report back at our next meeting, when we can consider next steps in more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. I'm just going to confirm. Do we need a seconder for the urgency motion? Can I call for a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Councillors, we have a procedural motion to consider an urgency motion for the reasons outlined by Councillor Lockie. All those in favour to consider the urgency motion at this meeting? All those in favour? Against? Okay, I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Now, as required under the Code of Meeting Practice, I rule that this matter can be considered as urgent and will be dealt with at the end of tonight's agenda. Thank you. Councillors, we now move to reports for council decision. Item 4, Henson Park.
Chair.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move this with an amendment that was circulated to staff earlier.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Drury. Thank you, Councillor Howard.
Yep. So Chair, we've just had some more good news recently with the announcement that the New South Wales State Government has come to the table and awarded AFL New South Wales ACT a $5 million grant for the Henson Park upgrade. This transformative project promises to make Henson Park the very centre of women's AFL and community sport in the Inner West, ensuring facilities are inclusive and support women, as well as retaining the community access that makes Henson Park so special. That is still being assessed, and I thank all the residents and councillors who came to the public meeting on the proposal last month. Thank you also to the staff who worked so hard to make that meeting happen. The report tonight isn't about that. It's simple in its objective: to recommend we put the plan of management for Henson Park out for public consultation to allow for licensing agreements such as those proposed with the AFL New South Wales and ACT and the Newtown Jets. The amendment, which, yes, is there now, thank you, has been drafted in consultation with the General Counsel and just corrects a drafting omission and ensures the provisions cover all of the upgrades planned as part of the project. The report also seeks to further clarify arrangements for the much-loved and essential Amy Street pathway that connects Amy Street to Centennial Street. Residents had raised concerns that the pathway might be incorporated into the oval footprint and therefore be closed to through access during the capped number of ticketed game days. While staff have made it crystal clear that there is no plan to close the pathway as part of the proposed DA, or any plans to do so in the future for that matter, I respect that residents wanted even greater assurance of that fact. I'm very thankful to staff for agreeing to make it even more crystal clear that the Amy Street pathway will not be removed by proposing further changes to the plan and management. Thank you to those residents who raised Amy Street pathway issue with me. This resolution tonight will leave no confusion that the pathway will stay open and the fencing be upgraded. Henson Park is a remarkable place that in so many ways is the heart of Marrickville. I'm so excited to see what comes next.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Drury? Reserve. Wonderful. Councillor Langford?
Out of practice. Yeah, I also have a further amendment that I would like to table. I have provided the wording to Catherine. Thank you. So I also wanted to commend staff on the consultation that we had recently at Marrickville Library regarding Henson Park, and also that the issues that were raised where some residents felt that they possibly, hadn't been consulted widely enough. So this amendment is really just speaking to the fact that we need to ensure that we consult as thoroughly as possible with all residents. So I'm suggesting that we also make sure that consultation happens across all council platforms and is inclusive as possible, and gives residents who may not use internet or may have English as a second language ample opportunity to also have their submission heard on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard, do you accept the amendment proposed?
I do.
Thank you. That is now incorporated into the original motion. Are there any further amendments? Sorry, any further speakers? Councillor, would you like a right of reply?
I waive my right of reply.
Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to put to the vote the amended motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5 and item 6 have been moved in globo. Item 7, local traffic committee meeting for
Just a
June
minute, I
and
gotta
July.
leave.
If we could just wait 1 second. Councillor Drury, are you moving this motion?
Yes, could I move it in an amended form in the words that I've provided?
Most certainly.
I'd like to thank the Traffic Committee for their work and those that contribute to it. I'd also just like the Traffic Committee to consider at every single meeting from now until Kingdom Come or the state government fix up Frederick Street. And it could be one either or, I tell you, because people have been waiting for the state government to take some responsibility on Frederick Street for a very long time. And there were promises made. There were promises made that after the last fatality that things would happen. Things that happened in June, things that happened in July, things that happened in August. Most of us can't see anything much happening there. So I'd like the Traffic Committee to have a spotlight on safety on Frederick Street each and every time, so that our good friends from Traffic for New South Wales, or whatever they call themselves at the moment, come along and have to face the item and explain what splendid progress they're making to the improvement of the safety on Frederick Street.
Thank you, Councillor Drury. Is there a seconder?
I'll second the Traffic Committee meeting minutes.
Thank you, Councillor
and
Griffiths.
I just briefly wanted to speak how happy I was to see in the minutes action on Murrell Street in Ashfield, near Ashfield Public. I think Another priority of the traffic committee and this term of council should be making our streets safer for pedestrians, particularly around schools. And I think that there's a lot of work that can be done in this area for the NOS Council. And I know myself and I'm sure other councillors have raised that issue of Mural Street and the potential to restrict turning from that street and restrict parking on that street during school drop-off hours for some time. So very happy to see action on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Atkins.
I just have a question for the staff, if I may. In relation to Traffic Committee, could you tell me whether the loss of parking and changes to traffic lanes in Trafalgar Street, Stanmore, that relate to construction at Stanmore Station have been referred to the Traffic Committee? And would you expect that Transport for New South Wales would do so? Thank you.
I'll put that question.
Through the Chair, those changes have not been referred through Traffic Committee. Transport for New South Wales has undertaken that road occupation under their own powers. Staff have raised the loss of parking as an issue with Transport prior to the removal of that parking. However, the removal has proceeded. Officers are trying to arrange a meeting with Transport for New South Wales to further outline the residents' concerns in that area and see if we can get any action taken to minimise that impact.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers for or against? I will put the motion, the amended motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously and note Councillor Stevens' absence, Scott's absence. Thank you.
Chair, may I move item 8, please?
You may. Can I have a seconder for item 8, General Manager's delegations?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Drury?
Chair, I believe we all understand that we do need to delegate certain responsibilities to the General Manager in order for the efficient running of the Council. The Act stipulates some things that we are not to delegate, and they are clearly our responsibility, and we should take those up with some relish. We have existing delegations, and the resolution before us suggests that we add some new delegations in relation to asset disposal, writing off debt, insurance renewal, etc. After some consideration, we're of the belief the existing delegations are about right, and we should leave them as they are, although I would be interested to hear from staff the arguments for or against increasing the delegation from the $1.5 million for the General Manager, if I may.
I'll put that to the General Manager.
Thank you, and through the Chair. In relation to delegations, obviously the efficiency of Council is very much determined on what is delegated to the General Manager. For example, 1.5 million means that he is currently able to undertake significant works without bringing it up through a Council meeting. Now, obviously, Council undertakes a lot of projects, as outlined in the Capital Works program that Council is across, and if we were to reduce this, it would obviously slow down quite substantially our ability to continue the works program as articulated. Obviously, if you increase, and I will stipulate that quite a lot of other councils that are our size are larger in volume, it obviously makes us faster on our feet and able to approve projects without bringing them to a council meeting.
Thank you. There's a further answer from the General Manager.
If I may too, it's important with the delegations that the projects that we're trying to do are things that we've already approved in the budget. So we've got a stringent procurement process. We have someone that comes in and acts as a probity advisor internally on all the works that we do. And if it was something that had there was a heightened community concern or something that you thought that council needed to have some input, I'd bring that back anyway to council, the delegation. Just got to remember that the big decision of the projects you put in the budget, we've got systems in place that can procure it properly, and it's not as though we're going to be putting things in there that you haven't already agreed to do.
Thank you.
And I'll also just observe the reality of the idea of reducing this just means what you will have is more tender documents before you, tender documents that have gone through proper and due process, and what are you going to do? You're going to reject those tender documents? You've got to have really good reasons to reject tender documents. I think the delegations that we have are good. I think it's the right balance. I think as we grow, we should consider whether the limit should grow each time we review these. I don't think it should be static, but I think we're about right. Seems to be working, and I'd urge all councillors to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Drury. Councillor Scott?
I concur with Councillor Drury's very reasoned explanation for his support for the General Manager's delegation remaining at the sensible and approved level that they are with regard to projects that are within our budget. And I urge my fellow councillors to concur.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Are there any other speakers? Councillor De Cruz?
Yes, I've got an amendment, which Catherine, and a list of amendments, I suppose.
Are they being moved individually or as one?
As one,
Okay.
I think, unless, of course, people are enthusiastic to pass one and not another.
Sorry.
Or maybe I will move them in. What's the big Latin word?
Seriatim.
Seriatim, that's the word.
One moment for me. Councillor Drury, as the... I'm just going to put the question. As the mover of the motion, do you accept the proposed amendments? Thank you. One moment, just on the... I think we have to move a procedural motion. Or from the councillor. And does this need to be seconded first? No, procedural.
Amendments or foreshadowed motion?
They're amendments.
Okay.
Is that an amendment or a foreshadowed motion?
They're amendments.
Sorry, point of order.
Yes.
I'm not asking you, Councillor De Cruz, I'm asking the chair. Is she considering them to be amendments or a foreshadowed motion?
Thank you, Councillor Drury. On advisement, it's not a direct negative. We're going to, therefore, not a foreshadowed motion. We will consider these as amended. Councillor De Cruz, before we are able to move these in seriatim, I'm required to seek a seconder for the amendments in the version that they've been proposed. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Shetty had her hand up first. Thank you, Councillor Shetty.
Okay. I think we've heard from officers.
So, Councillor De Cruz, you now need to move your procedural motion for these to be considered in seriatim.
Okay. Okay, I move, or should I move one at a time? Move them in seriatim.
In seriatim?
In seriatim, and but I will. So, do I talk to each one separately and we vote on it?
Yes. So what we will do is a procedural motion in the first instance to split these into 4 individual amendments where you will have the opportunity to speak, debate and vote on each of the 4 amendments separately.
Right.
We're all clear on that? Mm-hmm. In order to do that, you first have to move the procedural motion. So Councillor De Cruz has put forward a procedural motion to move these in seriatim.
Right.
I need a seconder.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. I will put the procedural motion. All those in favour?
Okay.
I'm just going to confirm, Councillor Stamoulis, are you voting in favour of the procedural motion in seriatim? Thank you. All those against? Thank you. The procedural motion has been lost. We will now consider the amendment in the original version that it's been put with the 4 parts. Councillor De Cruz, you're invited to speak to your amendments.
Thank you. I think we've heard from the officers the issue of the delays and the confusion in the process of bringing stuff to council. But unfortunately, that is the role of council, to provide oversight in the expenditure of funds within the council. But it's also not just the expenditure of funds, it is the functions of the council and what the council is doing. And therefore, I actually think, I agree with Councillor Drury that when a tender comes to council, and it's the first time we've ever seen that tender, or the scope or the requirements of that tender, it's actually extremely difficult to vote on that tender, because really, if it's about road building or whatever, we don't, it's beyond our capacity and it's beyond the briefings, and we rely on staff who made a good recommendation on that. So my amendments are about receiving the scope and the budget of tenders that are going out, and then to actually say how this scope fits into the policies that we want to progress in council. So these are things like, sometimes you can have routine procedures, but they lock you into a contract which limits what you can do in the future. And so I think that it's important that the councillors have oversight of that aspect of tenders and not so much on the financial aspect. And therefore, that's the ideal reason for moving item 1. Item 2 is my concern that with writing of debts and rates, the officers can come under extreme political pressure for that. And again, it's an issue of transparency that this comes to council to be written off. With the assets, I think I understood that was to do with desktops. And excuse me, can I have 1 more minute?
Councillors, we don't tend to be in the habit of extending time. We'll have an opportunity to go to Councillor Shetty.
Okay.
And so thank you.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you,
leave it at
Councillor
that.
De Cruz.
Thank you.
Councillor Shetty, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'll just speak very briefly. We believe that it's important for oversight and accountability to have a reasonably low delegation by the General Manager. We'd like to make sure that what we're seeing come before the council, that we are able to make decisions on large expenditure, and we think that it's an important mechanism for the accountability of the council, that we make decisions that are over and above $500,000, and so that's why we're moving to reduce the General Manager's delegation. So that is all.
Thank you, Councillor Shetty. Are there any other speakers for or against this amendment? Councillor Drury? No? Okay. I'll put the amendments to the vote. All those in favour of the proposed amendments? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? I declare the amendments lost. I'll now return to the original motion and return to the mover for a right of reply. Thank you. I'll now put the... Sorry, did someone say something? I'll now put the original motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Councillor Atkins?
Could I ask a question related to delegations not related to that particular delegation?
No. My understanding is it has to relate directly to the item on the agenda.
It relates to council consideration of delegations within the first 12 months of their term, we haven't seen the mayor's delegations. That's my question.
Point of order. The chair has made a ruling.
I'm not sure that's a question. One moment. So I'm advised that the question could have been asked at the time that we were discussing the agenda item. Once the agenda item is closed, we're not permitted to ask questions on that agenda item. So we'll move on. We have item 9, Local Government New South Wales Conference 2022.
Chair, I would like to move this item with some amendments that have been sent to the minute takers earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate the following councillors to attend the local government conference. Councillors Byrne, D'Arienzo, Drury, Griffiths, Langford, Atkins, Shetty and Lockie.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Councillor Lockie, would you like to speak? No? Thank you. I will. Are there any? Pardon me, sorry. Councillor Griffiths.
I just wanted to point out what Councillor Drury, I think, was interjecting with. Well, I can see it's been corrected. Pardon me.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths.
Wonderful. Yeah. I will now put to the vote this motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 10, Council Facilities and Expenses Policy.
Can I move as printed?
Thank you, Councillor Drury. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Drury.
I think we've discussed many of these matters before. I think it's now time to act.
Thank you. One moment, Councillor De Cruz, have you got it up? Oh, that's it there. Sorry, Councillor De Cruz.
Yes, I've sent through an amendment to the policy to change.
May I clarify that I'm the seconder of the motion?
You are the seconder of the motion, Councillor Scott. That's what I recorded. Apologies, I didn't give you the opportunity to speak.
I don't wish to speak. This is a very sensible policy that we've discussed quite a number of times, and I suggest that we adopt it. It's also been on exhibition.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. That's the original motion. Councillor De Cruz?
Yep. So there were 2 submissions made, and one was in regard to Christmas, a reference to Christmas being outdated. And I did a bit of Facebook polling, and there's various reactions to sending cards out. But I suggest we actually go to generic cards, and councillors can choose to use them how they wish instead of having Christmas cards with season's greetings in them. And therefore, that's the amendment I'm moving to the Council of Facilities Policy.
Thank you. Councillor Drury, is this an acceptable amendment?
No, I don't think so.
Councillor Scott?
Pardon my error. No, that's a splendid.
It's a learning night for us all.
A splendid amendment which has been wholeheartedly endorsed and accepted. If I read my notes closely, I'll do better next time, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Drury.
Thank you. It now becomes the amended motion. Are there any speakers for or against in this debate? No, wonderful. Let's put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Our next item is in Globo, the ARIC committee. Item 12. These are now reports for noting. The investment report, 31st of May 2022. Can I have a mover?
Moved so.
Councillor Drury, seconder. Councillor Lockie. Councillor Drury?
I thank the officers for bringing forward these reports. I think what we all note from maybe the occasional picking up of the paper or listening to the radio or even from Facebook, that we're in some somewhat difficult financial times. I'm glad that what we continue to do is to have a prudent investment approach, which I believe is reaping benefits for our community in a socially responsible fashion. I commend this report.
Thank you, Councillor Drury. Councillor Lockie? Thank you. Waives the right to speak. Any speakers for or against in this debate? Thank you. I will put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13, investment report at 30th of June 2022.
I'll spare you the same speech.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Anyone who cares to speak in this debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Yes. All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Wonderful. I'd like to move the next motion, item 14, engagement for the Inner West Local Environmental Plan Phase 2B. Is there a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. I move the officer's recommendation, and I'd like to thank the staff for building a deep program of engagement with our community. We will spend the next few months to possibly a year drafting and developing our planning proposals for the Inner West, and it's only right that the community is the central part of the conversation and also participates in the decision making. Planning for our future can be challenging where there are different views on what that future should look like, but everyone who wants to participate in this planning process should have the ability to. This comprehensive community collaboration plan aims to hear from a diversity of voices to build that future together. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to speak briefly. Thank you for moving to adopt the report. Engaging and consulting with the community on the Local Environment Plan Phase 2B is critical to its success. We know communities in Marrickville, Dulwich Hill and North Ashfield are slated as areas for growth, but we must ensure we're getting the balance right between taking our fair share and protecting the things we love about our suburbs. Their amenity, their open green space, their unique character and heritage, and their diversity too, by ensuring the housing mix we encourage is diverse and affordable. It's critical that the engagement we embark on now is comprehensive and genuine, that it accounts for the broad range of views, properly informs about the strategic decisions and choices before us as a community, and gives us the very best shot at planning our suburbs for the future. I particularly welcome new initiatives such as the People's Panel and efforts to ensure we're engaging everyone in our community, including residents from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. I fear that too often we've failed to properly engage with marginalised communities, and it's imperative that we do better to overcome barriers to participation in planning, not put up new ones. I thank staff for their work to create the many technical studies that inform the First Amendment to the LEP and Comprehensive DCP, and I encourage the whole community to get involved in this vital project and to share their views.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Are there any other speakers in this debate? Councillor Griffiths?
I'm just going to say a few brief words on a similar note to Councillor Howard. I think it's extremely important when we're talking about the future of the South Parramatta Road to engage renters and young people and those who are locked out of home ownership, which is a very significant amount of our community. And I think although not marginalised in many respects, a lot of these demographics, just something that we don't do well in local government. And I'm not saying us specifically, but broadly as a sector. So we need to make sure that we're not only engaging homeowners because our suburbs are so much more.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Lockie?
Yes, and yeah, thank you to the officers for all the work that's clearly gone into developing this very comprehensive consultation plan. Just only to note, in the table of dates that have been set aside for the council roundtables, just to note now that we've resolved to send about half of us to the local government conference at that first date that's there. We'll have to change on the 24th of October, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Are there any other speakers in this debate? I will put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 15 is in globo.
I would like to move that we adopt the officer's recommendation in item 16, Railway Parade.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shetty. Councillor Scott?
I waive my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Shetty?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions about, parks maintenance that I would like to put to the officers if I can. Just wanted to understand, does the streetscape and parks maintenance include the remaining section of Burrawan Park that runs adjacent to Railway Parade? And I'll just ask the other one at the same time if that's okay. Does parks maintenance include the repair or replacement of wooden fencing that runs parallel to the road on the north side of Railway Parade? Because there's several broken wooden fences along this section, and I'm just wondering whether they've been assessed for maintenance requirements. There's quite a lot of detail in this report about mowing and just more general kind of garden maintenance, but I just want to clarify if that's included. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shetty. I'll put that question.
Through the chair, I'll have to take that question on notice and bring back some advice.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in the debate? I will put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Item 17, we are up to our notice of motions. Councillor Stamoulis.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Councillors, we all know of the recent media that we've seen on the issues of rates payments, and what's occurred out of that is that we may now have a lack of understanding about how our rates policy, that is rates hardship, rates deferral, actually operates. And of course we have 10 new councillors now, so it might be reasonable time to try and understand these issues in detail. So this is a very simple motion, councillors, saying that we need to get up to date on our hardship and rates deferral policies, understand those, understand how those operate. And as we've discussed tonight about delegations, sometimes when too many things get delegated, councillors don't find out vital information about the performance of the council and the operation of its policies. So this is asking for a very simple briefing, as well as some numbers, facts and figures on the access to these policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stamoulis. Is there a seconder to this motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Langford. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would, and I actually would like to put forward an amendment to the motion. I have provided that wording to the minute taker earlier on.
Councillor Langford is proposing an amendment to your motion, Councillor Stamoulis. Is it accepted by you?
I'm just having a quick read now, thank you, Chair, and that looks reasonable.
Thank you. It now becomes part of the motion. Councillor Langford.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to add this clause basically. I believe that in the former Marrickville and Leichhardt councils there was a regular annual briefing of councillors regarding any outstanding rates owing, any rates subject to recovery, or rates being written off, or deferral agreements, and I'm requesting that that be reinstated under the Inner West Council so that we just have full transparency around any outstanding rates, basically.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Langford. Are there any other speakers in this debate? Okay, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Has been recorded. All those against? Thank you. As the vote is tied, I will use my casting vote against this motion. I declare this motion lost.
Chair?
Councillor Howard.
Could I please move a procedural motion related to item 18, Councillor Griffith's notice of motion, that we consider the item in seriatim?
Councillors, we have a procedural motion to consider item 18 in seriatim. We now know what that means, what we're doing. We're splitting each of the proposals to be voted on individually. Councillor Howard, do you wish to speak to on your procedural motion?
Yes, please. I'll just speak substantively now.
Point of order. Point.
Oh, sorry.
Relax. She'll get there.
Councillor, would you like to say your point of order? Is it that he needs a seconder?
My point of order is that I think we should put the motion first, introduce it.
Oh, you're permitted to move a procedural motion at any point. Thank you. I do require a seconder for the procedural motion.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I will now go back to Councillor Howard.
Thank you. I'll just speak a bit more substantively now, both about the reasons why we want to address this in seriatim, and then speak very briefly on each of the points. So I thank Councillor Griffiths for tabling this motion. As I'm sure is the case across the chamber, I'm extremely proud of our world-class preschools, long daycare centres and OSH services. I'm proud of the quality of service we provide. I'm proud of our staff. I'm proud of the place these services hold in our communities. The New South Wales Government's modified procurement framework is causing disruption and fueling anger at schools across the state. As OSH services come up for tender, a trend is emerging. Good, long-running community and not-for-profit services are losing out to bigger for-profit services. We are asking to look at this item in seriatim so that we can address that substantive issue. While it isn't the case that every one of these for-profit providers are heartless, soulless conglomerates out to exploit our kids and need for care, the trend away from public services should concern us. It does concern us. It's clear from the officer's comments that while the state government's change in policy may have necessitated a tender at Wilkins, there were many other local factors at play in council staff's decision not to retender. It's my view that we should respect and trust that operational decision. I'm assured that there is no gap in service delivery for parents at Wilkins, and that council has extended our service for many months to ensure that was not the case. I'm assured that staff were redeployed to our remaining OSH services and are settling in well. I'm also assured that there is no plan, no intention whatsoever to close the remaining OSH services council operates. Finally, I think it's imperative that we listen to the expertise and knowledge we have in our staff and accept that expanding OSH services doesn't add up either economically or in terms of meeting a community need. I request that we discuss these items in seriatim so that we can acknowledge the good intention and spirit of the motion, but not tie ourselves to decisions that might impact the viability of all our services across early childcare.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. I will put the procedural motion to consider item 18 in seriatim to a vote. All those in favour? We have to vote on it. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, point 1.
Okay, so I'm just going to speak to the lot. Until recently, council has operated 3 out of our school care services inherited by the Marrickville Council, be it Ferncourt Public, Marrickville West, and until recently Globe Wilkins. A progressive council should be looking for opportunities to expand its out-of-hour school care services, not discontinue them. A month ago, I was informed by parents, not the council, that council had decided not to tender, or not to compare the tender process for Globe Wilkins, a service we currently operate. My understanding is the service was well regarded by parents and carers. The council managed service has also ended prior to the provider successful in the tender setting up shop. So this does mean, in my opinion, that there is a gap in the way that parents will need to move their children from a well-run public sector managed care service to another, likely private provider, before continuing on at the service run by those successful in the tendering process. So they're moving their kids from one service to another and then to a further service. And I think that's problematic. I regret not addressing this strategic question before the decision not to tender was made. Once local councils give up their OSH services, it will be hard to get them back. I believe council can improve our long day care services while retaining and expanding our OSH. I would have liked to have been asked how council can put increased support behind our family and children services rather than making a decision to downsize our OSH to focus on another service, in particular day long care. This motion is to ensure council takes control over its important OSH services to ensure we continue to retain them, and if the opportunity arises, to strategically expand our services. We know we run them well, and so does the community. Let's be proud of that. It's also to push back against the neoliberal attack on public education that demands regarded OSH services to be periodically put out for tender. Care for children, these services should be about care for children, not making a buck of hardworking parents. Education in public hands. That's my expectation from council and the Labor majority.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, do I have a seconder for?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Howard. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm pleased to second point one. Changes to the New South Wales Government Procurement Framework have resulted in a shift away from community and not-for-profit providers. While I appreciate there can never be a one-size-fits-all approach that works for every school, and that those decisions that impact local school communities should be made at the local level and by the local school communities themselves, the tender process clearly privileges for-profit providers, and so I welcome and thank Councillor Griffiths for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Are there any other speakers in this debate? Councillor Griffiths, would you like your right of reply?
No.
Thank you. I will put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. The next motion, item 18.2.
Point two and
Point 2 is 18.2. Moved by Councillor Griffiths. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Griffiths.
I'll waive this one.
Thank you, Councillor Howard.
Just briefly, I note that the Director of Community has made it clear in her insightful and comprehensive officer's note that this has always been the intention of council staff, that we will be retendering for those two remaining services. These services are important to families, and point 2 of this motion gives them and school communities certainty that council will retender at the conclusion of the current arrangements. So I support point 2.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, would you like a right of reply?
No, thank you.
Are there any other speakers in the debate? Sorry, I skipped that part. No. Okay, I'll put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Item 18.3. Councillor Griffiths, is there a seconder for this motion? Yes? Second the motion. Yes, Councillor Langford. Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is an important point of the motion to make sure that if there is a decision not to tender for any reason, that we have another point to clearly back that up. That is council's expectation. I am concerned that many people in the community would have expected that Globe Wilkins would have been tendered for, and that's not how it panned out. And we're under the impression that council would have been keen to continue that service. So I think this is an important point, and I hope councillors vote for it.
Thank you. Councillor Langford.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to second that point and just say that I think just consultation with councillors is really important, and this was all about having transparency and also so that we can avoid situations where community come back and feel shocked by decisions and councillors themselves aren't aware of those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langford. Are there any other speakers in the debate? Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking against this motion here, number point 3, because we've already resolved to tender for the remaining OSH services, and I don't think we want to leave any doubt that this would not be the case. So removing point 3 from the motion removes any doubt at all that the existing services would be retendered and makes it crystal clear that council will retender, as we've just resolved, at the conclusion of the current arrangements. That absolutely will happen.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Griffiths, would you like a right of reply? Waived? Waived? Yeah. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Just wait a moment till that's recorded. All those against? As the vote is tied, I'll be using my casting vote to vote against this motion, and this motion is lost. I now move on to the final the final point of item 18.4. We have mover Councillor Griffiths. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. Councillor Griffiths? Thank you. Councillor De Cruz?
Yeah, I might just speak briefly and say that I think these are the sort of things that councillors do want to be involved in, the decision to carry out OSH or not proceed with OSH, and to understand the reasons that officers are tendering for an item or not. And if perhaps we actually do need a strategy, and it needs to be, obviously, councillors need to be briefed on what does happen, what is the strategy with childcare and our children's services in general. And I guess I could put a question to the Director of Communities in regard of whether there will be anything coming to councillors about the overall direction and strategy that we're taking with children's services in general, and in particular OSH.
I'll put that
to see whether we're expanding or contracting, or whether there are issues with the existing ones, or why, for example, it came as such a surprise that we learned
Point
through...
of order. Councillor De Cruz's question is not succinct. If she could conclude and clarify her question.
Councillor De Cruz, was it the first part of your question about the strategy that you intended to put to
just
the
elaborate
Director?
on that. But if the officers understood that, and I can't quite see, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. I'll put that question.
Through the chair. The strategy remains as presented to the councillors earlier in the year through the workshops, which is to prioritise implementation of the URBIS report.
Thank you. Was that the end of your response?
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in this debate?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Howard.
Thank you. I wish to speak against point 4. The Director of Community has been explicit in the officer's comment that it would be unwise to expand our OSH services beyond the existing services we operate. Given the multitude of other providers, the high cost of establishing new services, the specific requirements around staffing and ratios, and competition for space within schools, it's noted that expansion of OSH doesn't make economic sense. More importantly, I believe, OSH is not where we are seeing the greatest community need. There are a large number of providers across schools, and as the officer's comment makes crystal clear, the greatest demand for services is for long daycare services. The URBIS review calls on Council to make decisions in this space that are rooted in consideration of social impact, quality of service, and financial sustainability. Council staff are headlong into that project and working to deliver on those principles during the current term of Council. Redirecting resources and focus away from this work and instead towards an expansion of OSH certainly threatens our ability to make childcare services across the board financially sustainable, and it could likely risk quality and social impact too. Let's invest in those areas where the social impact and economic opportunities are greatest, and where we know we're achieving the greatest success. I note Urangamal Early Learning Centre has recently been recognised by the Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority with an exceeding rating in the national quality standards less than a year after opening. Globe Preschool is going from strength to strength and is set to formally open in the new purpose-built preschool building following a hard-fought campaign from parents, state MPs and councillors. We're all committed in this chamber to supporting our childcare and early learning services. I do understand the intentions behind this motion, but think part 4 could actually work against what we're trying to collectively achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Scott?
Thank you. I would also like to speak against item 4 of point 18, and just to bring some real world experience to this situation, I was the president of a parent run OSH that was facing a looming tender and vastly increased responsibilities in regulatory matters including WHS, child safety, food safety, building regulation and employment relations, all of which are critical to ensuring quality care for children. My centre also elected not to compete for the tender, but to go through a managed process of safely and cooperatively selecting a new provider that parents participated in with the critical assurance that there was no gap in service. And to clarify for Councillor Griffiths, no gap in service means no day that your child is without care, not moving between services, which happens a lot. I was extremely proud of how we handled this transition, and I'm sure our council officers will handle it in exactly the same way. I support the advocacy to government regarding the onerous nature of the tender process, the neoliberal nature of the tender process. However, I also understand the operational decision that staff have made and their strategic advice regarding the future of USH services and where council's resources can strategically and best be deployed in the community. I wish the school parents all the best in their transition between services, and I thank officers for their considered report here today.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Are there any other speakers in this debate? I'll return to Councillor Griffiths for a right of reply.
Yeah, so I do think it's a good sign that Council will advocate for the tendering requirement to be revisited, and I hope that Labor will do better in this matter than the forces of darkness they currently sit on, within Macquarie Street. I am disappointed though that Labor is not interested in expanding our terrific USH services, which we've heard tonight, and I've definitely heard within the community are well regarded. Expanding the public sector's involvement in education and care, I think, is imperative and not a project which I would so easily give up on. These services should be about care for children, not making a buck from hardworking parents who toil throughout the day and night. Education in public hands, and I'm disappointed that we're not committed to expanding education for after school care.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? As the vote is tied, I'll use my casting vote to vote against. The motion is lost. We will now move on to item 19, Marrickville Road and Buckley Street, Marrickville. Before you start, Councillor Howard, can I get a seconder for the motion? Councillor Langford, thank you. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Langford, for seconding the motion. In April last year, Amy Ho was heading to work. On her way to Sydenham Station, she began to cross the pedestrian crossing at Buckley Street and Marrickville Road when she was hit by a P-plater. She hit the bonnet of the car and was carried away down Buckley Street before the driver slammed on the brakes and sent Amy flying to the ground. Her ankle was broken in 2 places. The driver sped off, claiming she was late for work. 2 ambulances and police attended the scene. Amy was unable to work for months. She was once an avid hiker, but now struggles to walk 50,000 steps a week. A year later, Amy is still being treated for PTSD and attends weekly physio sessions. When I met her at the intersection this week, she wept as she relived the accident, but was hopeful that someone had listened and that we'd agree here tonight to do what we could to improve the intersection. Amy's provided a statement she'd like me to read. The safety at Marrickville Road and Buckley Street intersection must be improved so that no one experience what I have suffered in the last 1.5 years. I fear for the safety of every pedestrian that is walking to and from Sydenham train station. You only need to stand at the intersection at peak hour to see drivers in a rush, driving at or over the 60-kilometre limit, which in my opinion should be 40 kilometres in that zone. The zebra striping is faded, there are no speed humps to assist slowing down traffic, and that zebra crossing is on a corner, limiting visibility when approaching from Marrickville Road. In addition, there isn't a week that goes by where I witness a car driving straight through all the zebra crossings along Marrickville Road, Illawarra Road shopping centres, with complete disregard to people waiting to cross or crossing. This motion calls on Transport for New South Wales, who is responsible for the intersection, to step up and take further action to improve safety at the intersection. It also asks council staff to ensure we're giving every consideration to how we can improve safety as part of our planned upgrades for Marrickville Road East, for which we're now in the detailed design phase. I thank Amy for sharing her story with us and ask that councillors support the motion so that some good can come of the terrible accident and injuries that Amy has suffered. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we really need to work on that. I'm not sure we can accept this bill. Okay, Councillor Langford.
I'll just keep it brief. I'd like to commend Councillor Howard for bringing the motion to the meeting and wholeheartedly support any opportunities for council to advocate on behalf of pedestrians, that we prioritise pedestrians first over cars, and that I agree that that area is very dangerous, and there are many other areas, so that we keep the pressure on Transport for New South Wales and the state government to make improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langford. Are there any other speakers? Thank you. Councillor Howard, would you like a right of reply?
Just to thank Amy again for sharing her story.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 20. Councillor Sardoulias, before we move the motion, is there a seconder? We had 6 seconders. Councillor De Cruz, thank you. Councillor Sardoulias.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring this motion to the council meeting tonight. Automated external defibrillators, AEDs, are portable electronic devices that are used by everyday people, bystanders, when one is experiencing a sudden cardiac arrest. Deputy Mayor, I have a condition called SVT, that is supraventricular tachycardia. In layman's terms, it just means that I have an irregular fast heart rhythm because of the electricals in my heart. Whilst my condition is not entirely life-threatening, it can be unpleasant. However, there are many community members across the LGA that do have life-threatening issues and will in fact die from sudden cardiac arrest. Many defibrillators that are accessible for the community are located on council property, either in our facilities or at our sports grounds, and we have a duty of care to ensure they are working and that the community knows where to find them in the event of an emergency. AEDs must be retrievable within minutes of a cardiac arrest. Alarmingly, where there is a defibrillator, a majority of them are not working, are not in their correct location, are out of warranty, have been misplaced, or are locked away outside of business hours. This motion calls for an audit of access, use, storage and maintenance of AEDs at council facilities, venues and sports grounds, and for a register and map to make it easier to find them. The motion also asks council officers to look for opportunities to expand public access to AEDs and to expand training of how to use AEDs at council-owned venues. In summary, using a defibrillator can mean the difference between life and death. I commend this motion to you.
Thank you. Councillor De Cruz.
Thank you, Councillor Sardoulias, for bringing this motion to council. I agree wholeheartedly with the comments about the points about we have some of these in place and some are not working, because I think I passed one on just off Carrington Road on the oval down there. There's one and it struck me. I wonder if that works and I wonder if I know how to use it. So I think it'd be very valuable. I might just say the map's a great idea, but there's also toilet maps and things like that. And what strikes me is that in reality, people look up Google Maps. And so maybe officers can take that on board, that we look at putting these, and maybe even if you're involved in the advocacy on AEDs beyond council as well, that we look to these being registered on Google Maps, where it will be widely accessible to everybody visiting the area. And also maybe even the signage we were briefed on recently for Norton Street and Parramatta Road improvements, that AEDs get marked on those as well. So thank you for bringing this motion to council. I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. Are there any other speakers? Okay. I will, Councillor Sardoulias, would you like a right of reply?
I'll waive my right of reply.
Thank you. Waived. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. We are up to item 21. Enhancing active transport infrastructure. Can I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Shetty. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I understand Councillor Shetty has a number of amendments she wishes to propose to the motion.
Yes, can I please get those on the screen?
And then, Councillor Stevens, I'll ask whether you accept these amendments to your motion.
Would you like me to read them out?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm happy to accept those amendments into the motion.
Can I just say, so 4 is F, is it?
It's just an additional point F, so there's some other points ahead of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. So those amendments have been accepted and will now be incorporated into the original motion. I'll now go to Councillor Stevens to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. As someone who cycles to work, who cycles for recreation and who cycles competitively, but not always that successfully, for the Dulwich Hill Bicycle Club, it is a pleasure to move this motion on active transport infrastructure in the Inner West. A central goal of Council's community strategic plan is to create livable, connected neighbourhoods that allow people to walk, cycle and move around the Inner West with ease. We know that improving active transport infrastructure, making our footpaths and streets safer and laying out clearly planned active transport routes across the Inner West carries many benefits. It is good for individual and community health and well-being. It helps to bring our communities together. It makes our streets more vibrant and enjoyable places to socialise and to shop, and it is also great for the environment. As the Inner West Bicycle Coalition has noted, with the amalgamation of the Inner West Council, bicycle route planning is now continuous across the 3 former council areas, with the Greenway being a clear example of this more holistic approach to active transport planning. There is also now more consistent and equitable support for active transport projects than was ever possible under the previous 3 councils. Cycling and other active transport infrastructure in the Inner West is improving, but it could be better. And that is why Council has been developing the Inner West Cycling Strategy and Action Plan, which will be placed on public exhibition later this year. I thank and acknowledge Council officers, particularly Bridget Kelly, for their dedicated work on this important document that will guide Council's approach for years to come. It is really important that we get this strategy right, but it is also important that we keep momentum moving on active transport projects and initiatives right now. And to this end, this motion identifies a number of practical and effective measures that can support and complement the strategy as it's finalised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Shetty.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Stevens for bringing this motion to Council. I'm also an avid cyclist, and the thing I love about cycling is that once you can afford the layout for a bike, however crappy it is, you can get around for free, and that is a great leveller. This is an excellent first step in improving the active transport infrastructure across the Inner West. The Inner West Bicycle Coalition and other advocates for safe walking and cycling infrastructure have been incredibly active in this space, sharing their knowledge and experience, and I thank them for everything that they do to keep this front of mind for our elected representatives, ourselves included. I'd also like to thank Neil Tonkin for taking the time to come in this evening and speak in favour of this motion, and for hanging around to listen to the debate, which is always quite a wait, so thank you. We've seen from examples the world over that when we build good, safe cycling infrastructure, it gets used, more people get on their bikes and take those shorter trips instead of getting in their cars. I've had plenty of conversations with people in the Inner West who would like to ride a bike and just don't feel safe. I also had the privilege of recently travelling to Copenhagen, and what I observed was that people from all persuasions were cycling because it had good, safe cycle infrastructure. Old and young, women, business people in suits, people dressed up for an evening out, literally everyone was cycling everywhere. I would love to see that same thing happening in Sydney, and although it may be some years away, we can start now. Instead, in Sydney, we are suffering from a traffic nightmare. Anyone trying to get around the Inner West during peak hour or on a Saturday morning knows what I'm talking about. Crystal Street is just hell. We need to be more proactive in this space to get these projects underway, and actions such as these will hopefully start to make the improvements that we need to make sure that people who want to cycle can find it safe, fast and easy to get around. So I'd like to thank Bridget and staff for the work on the bicycle strategy that we're going to get later in the year, and I hope that everyone supports this. Thank you, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Councillor Shetty. Are there any other speakers in the debate? I'll go to Councillor Stevens for a right of reply.
Just a very brief right of reply to point out that it was remiss of me not to acknowledge the presence of Neil Tonkin, who has given up his evening and spoke so eloquently at the opening in the public forum. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. I will now put this motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Notice motion 22, deliberative democracy. Can I have a seconder for the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. So this is my motion. We are working hard to broaden our community engagement program, and deliberative democracy is all about placing people closer to the affairs of government at the centre of the issue or decision that affects them. I'm extremely excited at the opportunity in drafting our LEP that we will be making use of deliberative engagement practices. This will be a first for our council, but I did want to acknowledge that Marrickville Council successfully used deliberative democracy in an infrastructure jury in 2014. At the heart of deliberative democracy is a process in which a broadly representative body of people weigh evidence, deliberate to find common ground, and develop detailed recommendations on a policy issue for a public authority. There are some fundamental principles that are needed for this to succeed. I'm aware of the OECD's good practice principles, and I'd like for the Council to adopt these and even explore an evaluation of these principles as we embark on our deliberative democracy processes for the drafting of our LEP, just to make sure that we learn from these for the future. Deliberative democracy is yet another innovative way to engage with our community on important decisions. I hope for your support. Councillor Scott?
Thank you. It's an honour to second this motion. Deliberative democracy is a really interesting concept that has been successfully deployed in other circumstances to achieve participatory, representative decision making. And I thank you, Madam Deputy Chair, for bringing this to us.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Are there any other speakers in the debate? Councillor Atkins.
Just to say to start with that I totally support this motion. I totally support these principles and their application in the work that we do. But I would just like to point out the irony of this motion. Greens and independent councillors have been calling for greater community involvement based on these principles in the development of the business case, which has been resisted all the way by Labor councillors. The 6 principles that are set out in the paper are exactly what we have been asking for in the business case. I'll be voting for this motion, but I'd just like to say that the application of these principles would have dealt with many of the current criticisms of the process of developing the demerger business case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Are there any other speakers in the debate? I'll waive my right of reply and I will now put this motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 23, supporting responsible dog ownership. Councillor Smith, I hope you've brought some puppies for us.
Sadly not, I should have brought mine.
Before you proceed, can I have a seconder to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. As an avid dog lover, it's wonderful to see more of our canine companions across the Inner West. We know that dog ownership helps to encourage an active lifestyle and improves mental health. And here in the Inner West, we support and encourage this through Council's significant investment in our more than 44 dog parks and associated facilities across the LGA. In May 2019, there were approximately 35,500 dogs residing in the Inner West, and we know that this number has undoubtedly risen over the last 2 years. Across Australia, pet ownership has risen from 61% 2 years ago to 69% this year, and more than 1 million additional dogs have joined Australian households since 2019, and I've personally contributed to that since last December. Unfortunately, this has been accompanied by an increase in dog behavioural problems. As has been well documented, the rush of people adopting COVID puppies during lockdown while not able to access puppy training or socialise their dogs properly is having ongoing impacts on individuals in the community. RSPCA Victoria records a significant jump in the number of surrenders with behaviour problems, including aggression, separation anxiety and destructive behaviours. Pre-COVID, about 25% of surrenders had behavioural problems. Now they say it's about 45%. And more locally, Sandra Hodgins from the Summerhill Village Vet notes that 95% of surrender requests are due to behavioural issues. This has further implications for councils, including responding to problem dogs, incidents and putting pressure on our local pounds and rehoming services. As a council, we have a responsibility to support and encourage responsible dog ownership in our LGA. We want to activate our dog parks and ensure that humans and animals alike can safely enjoy our open spaces. And as dogs increasingly accompany us into cafes and pubs, it's important we support responsible ownership here too. This motion seeks to explore a number of cost-effective and common-sense options for supporting responsible dog ownership, including working with authorised local providers to provide free puppy training in our local dog parks. CanStar estimates the average cost of puppy training in Australia is between $100 and $250, but this can be even higher in parts of inner Sydney, and we have to acknowledge that cost can be a barrier.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Seconder, Councillor Lockie.
Yeah. Look, I'd just like to thank Councillor Smith for bringing this motion. I think it's a really important one. I'd also like to acknowledge the excellent work our companion animals team at Council does. They're really amazing, compassionate, go out of their way every time they find a lost pet to reunite them with their owners, as well as, and they also run that wonderful Inner West Pets Facebook page where they're constantly responding to questions that people have about ownership. Look, I'm also a dog owner. I've got a greyhound who unfortunately wasn't terribly well socialised around other animals as a puppy, just because greyhounds don't tend to be. And I have lost count of the amount of times that I've had other people's dogs rush up to her and scare, really to set her off, because people don't understand oftentimes what the rules are around how other what their responsibilities are around keeping their own dog under control, around how other dogs sometimes behave, and that just because your dog's friendly doesn't mean that interaction is necessarily going to go well. So anything we can do to increase education around the responsibilities we all have as pet owners to make sure that these incidents don't happen and that we can all enjoy, a wonderful life with our animals would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Langford?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to commend the motion as well, being a very long-term dog owner of the Inner West, and I fully support, introducing or auditing what we have, and also introducing opportunities for people, particularly people who might be on low incomes, to have puppy training classes and to explore that opportunity. But I guess what I'd also like to advocate for, and I put forward an amendment which I've consulted with Simon and also with Chloe about, and I've provided that wording, is just that if council staff could provide a briefing note that would investigate opportunities for introduction of free regular information seminars about pet ownership. So basically, before people acquire a pet, and that could be any companion animal, particularly a dog or a cat, get more, provide opportunity for more thought about what ownership involves and what the regulations are and how to socialise them, how to train them, and how much it costs as well, what it involves. So I'd like to suggest that that's something that council perhaps could offer, but anything that we can do to try and basically improve behavioural education of owners as well, because it's a lot about the owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langford. So we have a proposed amendment. Councillor Smith?
I'm happy to incorporate this.
Thank you. The proposed amendment is now incorporated in the original motion. We'll continue debate. Are there any other speakers for the debate? I will put the motion as amended. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Oh, my apologies. I didn't come back to you for a right of reply. Is there anything you wanted to say? All good. Thank you. Sorry about that. Item 24, Bay Run event funding 21st of August 2022. Can I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Drury, thank you. Councillor Scott?
I wave my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Drury? Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Yeah.
Councillor De Cruz.
Could I ask a question about how much funding
or sponsorship we give to the Bay Run?
I'll put that
That's
question.
you again, Director of Communities.
Through the chair, we don't currently.
Thank you.
We are credited, sorry, I understand that we are credited with sponsoring them on the ads.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz. The code says that we're not allowed to discuss or debate an answer that's provided, but you are permitted to put another question. But there's no discussion on the answer. So, is there a further question? Councillor Atkins.
So can we clarify what it is that we do provide that means that the Bay Run credit Inner West Council as a sponsor, both on their website and in their documentation?
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. I'll put that question.
Through the chair, I'm not aware that they do currently do that. And I'm not aware that there has been previous sponsorship.
I might add, councillors, that this is for local P&C that have previously had funding from WestConnex. WestConnex have agreed, or Transport for New South Wales, to provide part of the funding, so they're matching what we're doing in order for the event to go ahead, which would have gone ahead because of COVID, and they pulled the pin. So it's and we found out this afternoon that Transport for New South Wales are matching what we're putting in. So there'll be further discussions in terms of, I'm sure there'll be some recognition, but what that is, I can't confirm yet.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in the debate?
I just had another question. What's the normal process that a community group or event would undertake to receive funding of this kind?
Thank you. I'll put that question.
Through the chair, there's the annual grants program that covers a range of different areas. I think there's 8 to 10 different categories. There is also a small discretionary fund as part of that that can be used for minor projects or sponsorships.
Thank you. Are there any...
Sorry, just a further question, if I may. Are there any other local groups that have received this same sort of urgent funding from that fund in the last 12 months?
Through the chair, I'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in the debate? I will return to the mover for a right of reply.
Thank you. Just to thank the General Manager for confirming the additional funding provided by Transport for New South Wales. Appreciate you getting back to us with that, and I would like to thank the General Manager and also the Mayor, who is absent this evening, for their advocacy on behalf of the Bay Run and the Dobroyd Point Public School P&C, and wish them all the best for their community activity.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 25. Inner West Council procurement. I will, Councillor Drury, before you speak, I'll ask for a seconder for the motion. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Drury?
Councillors, we're very fortunate in that we employ a lot of great staff who do a lot of great work for our community. And this motion highlights the staff who are working in the procurement area, and we have been recognised as one of the leading councils in New South Wales in terms of procurement, which I think is a great honour and a great testament to the leadership and dedication of the staff who work in this area. When I learnt about the complex process for looking at reviewing and benchmarking, it kind of did my head in, and I thought, my goodness, it does take a very special sort of person to really want to get into this area, and good on them, and thank you. And I think we all benefit as a council and a community from having a good procurement process.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Drury. Councillor Stevens?
I don't have anything to add to Councillor Drury's comments.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Councillor Drury, would you like a right of reply? Waived. I will put this motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Sorry, before I do, can I just check Councillor Stamoulis? Councillor Stamoulis, if you can hear us, we need to record your vote. We can't see you because it looks like your camera's off, but you're able to indicate through using the hand function. So I'm going to. No, maybe he's not there. Okay. So all those in favour was everybody in the room. Nobody was against, and absent was Councillor Stamoulis. I declare that motion carried. I think that's right. Okay, we will now move to, we'll now move to the late agenda item 34. Sorry, before we do.
If you just wouldn't mind if I
Councillor Scott.
have to leave.
We need
This
to
is item
absent
34,
yourself.
Tempe Bunnings.
Tempe, no, sorry.
Are we doing 34? Settle down, let her do it.
Sorry, 1 second.
Calm down, she'll get there.
Before the confidential, okay, we haven't done a procedural motion to move that. So does that mean we go reports for confidential now? Okay, okay. Sorry about that. We can either move a procedural motion to deal with the Bunnings item now, or we move into confidential session and deal with items King George Park and update on acquisition.
I'll move the procedural motion. Will we consider the late report and the urgency motion before we go into confidential session? Can I move that way?
Yes, we can.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak to that motion?
Nothing.
Thank you. Right reply. I'll put that procedural motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. I will now move to item 34, which is the MOD 2021/0376, giving Councillor Scott time to exit the room at 750 Princess Highway, Tempe, Bunnings, Tempe. Thank you, Councillor Howard. Will you be moving?
Yes, please.
Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Langford. Councillor Howard?
Thank you, Chair. I thank staff for the diligence and speed with which they've produced this report and for the care with which they've spelled out the current circumstances around the proposed modification for Tempe Bunnings. The proposal continues to cause considerable distress in the Tempe community. Initial works have begun on the site and surrounding streets, and residents want assurance that their simple demand for a safe traffic plan isn't being steamrolled. The report raises a number of concerns, not least of which is the timing for the determination hearing on the 1st of September. To be clear, the Council re-exhibited the modification as required by the Regional Planning Panel. The Traffic Committee has proposed important measures for the South Tempe LATM, including the soft closure of Union Street, 10km/h shared zone in Union Street, and a partial road closure of Brooklyn Street, that we have voted unanimously tonight to put out to public consultation. At the same time, although it's separate from that planning process, I note the draft independent feasibility study for traffic lights is currently with staff, and that the next step is to embark on conversations with Transport for New South Wales and Bunnings as to how they can be safely incorporated into the design for the store. As a council and a community, we're moving forward and fulfilling all of our obligations under the deferral, whilst at the same time fighting to ensure that every single option to make our roads safe for kids stays on the table. I note that the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel has scheduled a determination date for the 1st of September, and that it will be impossible for Council to have completed and agreed to the LATM before that time. I commend and thank the General Manager for writing to the Chair asking that that date be reviewed, and add my voice on behalf of the Tempe community to that call. Chair, I ask you to please delay the determination date until such a time as we can achieve agreement on the South Tempe LATM and fulfil the obligations set out in the deferral notice. As always, I thank the passionate and committed residents of Tempe for their ongoing work to make their local roads safe. I think I speak for all councillors when I say we're with you and that we will continue to fight for you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard.
It's just amazing.
Councillor Langford.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Howard for those words. I'd like to echo my sincere thanks to council officers for preparing the report and promptly organising the traffic light feasibility study and the re-exhibition of the Tempe South LATM. It is a very complex matter, and I note that Bunnings have launched a Class 1 appeal to the Land and Environment Court, and that Council's also noting Council's request to delay the determination date to allow further time for Council to complete the engagement. And I also note that Senior Manager of Planning will provide the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel with a briefing on the matter on 19 August. So, yeah, I'd like to also acknowledge the community and thank them for their patience. And I wanted to put forward an amendment just keeping the community in mind, and I have submitted the words to the minute taker, and I ask that those be shared. So in the interest of keeping the community informed, that council staff facilitate a face-to-face meeting with the community at a local venue prior to the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel determination.
Thank you, Councillor Langford. Councillor Howard, do you accept the proposed amendment to your motion?
Yes.
Thank you. That's now been incorporated into the original motion. Are there any other speakers on the motion? No. Councillor Howard, would you like a right of reply?
I waive my right of reply.
Thank you. I'd now like to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Before we move on to the next item, would somebody please invite Councillor Scott? Thank you. Okay. Thank you. We will now be dealing with Councillor Lockie's urgency motion. Is there someone to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Councillor Lockie.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, councillors, for your leave to consider this tonight. As I've said in the motion, I was recently contacted by the CEO of Addison Road Community Organisation, who advised me that Inner West Police Area Command had reached out to them about a rise that they were observing in food theft in our area. When I spoke to the police last week, they confirmed that they'd seen these figures jump just over the past month. To their credit, they responded quickly with community outreach and education to try and prevent theft from happening and keep people out of the justice system, which is commendable. They also wanted to make it clear how much they appreciate the work we already do in this space, and that they would welcome any further support we can provide to shine a light on this challenging issue and to support residents in our community who are now or maybe at risk of resorting to stealing food to get by. When I spoke to Addie Road, they also confirmed that they've seen a significant rise in recent weeks in people accessing their food relief services. And of course, they're just one provider in our area of these services. What's really concerning is how closely these rises have followed the recent increases we've seen in the cost of living. There hasn't been the kind of time lag we might normally expect, and that's because we're now seeing everything we rely on going up in price all at once. And I think it's tipping a lot of people who are just managing to hold on after an already tough few years over the edge. We're really fortunate to have some great support services operating in the Inner West that we as a council already work with, so there's a lot we can do to help connect our residents to those services, which is why my motion calls for us to investigate these opportunities as a matter of urgency. We also know that these organisations and our most vulnerable residents need ongoing financial support, which is where we urgently need state and federal governments to step up and step in. This is a much broader issue that goes beyond our borders, and if state and federal governments don't act quickly, a lot of vulnerable people are going to fall through the cracks.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Councillor Atkins?
Just very briefly to support what Councillor Lockie has said, to express our support for the Inner West Police Area Command raising this and their aim of keeping people out of the justice system. and to commend what Councillor Lockie has said. Obviously, this is an issue that is not just relevant to our LGA, so needs to be dealt with in combination with other LGAs as well as other organisations. And just to note too that there is the possibility of speaking with our local NGOs about this at the NGO forum, which is taking place next week.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay. The mover now has the right of reply. Waived. Thank you, Councillor Lockie. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. We are now, okay, councillors, we're about to discuss reports with confidential information and we'll need to move into closed session. We'll require a procedural motion. Councillor Stevens, moved. Thank you. line. I'm joking, I'm joking.
Dare I say it's best chair,
We have to
best
do
chairing
this,
of my
don't we?
term so far.
So I agree with you.
Yeah. Are we back on? Not yet? Sorry. Won't be long, councillors. We're back? Okay, great. Welcome back, public. You will note council has resolved 2 confidential items, being item 32, King George Park and Eastern Park upgrades tender report, and item 33, update on acquisition of investment properties. These decisions will also be reflected in the minutes. That's it. There being no further business, thank you for your attendance and participation in the meeting. The meeting is now declared closed at 8:45 p.m. Thank you, everyone.